There are two moments that define a man's life. The moment he realizes he would do anything for his children, and the moment he realizes his children know it and have stopped caring. For me, both moments happened on the same Sunday in May 2024. And everything I believed about family, loyalty, and what a father is worth collapsed before the dessert plates were even cleared. My name is Harold Sinclair. I'm 64 years old. I spent 31 years building a property management company in Calgary, Alberta, raised my son alone after my wife passed, and made every sacrifice a father could make without once thinking it was unusual. That's what fathers do. You don't keep score. You don't expect receipts. You love without conditions, and you trust that somewhere, somehow, it registers. I was wrong, and it took a $38,000 river cruise to show me exactly how wrong I had been. Before I go further, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. We share true stories every single day on this channel, stories about real families, real consequences, and the kind of hard lessons that nobody talks about at dinner. Drop a like and let me know in the comments what province you're watching from. Your support means more than you know. Mother's Day weekend in Calgary starts cold. Even in May, there's still a bite in the air that reminds you winter never fully lets go of this city. I woke at 6:15 that Saturday morning, the light thin and gray through the bedroom curtains. I still sleep on the right side of the bed. 37 years of habit. My late wife, Patricia, always said she needed to be closest to the door in case the kids needed her in the night. The kids, just the one. As it turned out, our son, Daniel. Patricia was gone 11 years now. Ovarian cancer. 14 months from diagnosis to the day I stood in a funeral home on McLeod Trail, trying to remember my own postal code when they asked me to fill out the paperwork. I made coffee, stood at the kitchen window of my house in Brentwood, and watched a magpie pick at something in the frozen grass. Patricia would have shooed it away. She had opinions about magpies. Daniel had called the week before to remind me about the Mother's Day brunch his wife had organized. Her name is Suzanne. They'd been married 4 years. Suzanne's mother, Elaine Beaumont, was the kind of woman who made any room feel like an audition. Elegant, well-traveled, effortlessly opinionated. Her husband Gerard had sold his dental practice 3 years earlier, and they now split their time between their condo in Canmore and a place in Palm Springs. They did not need anything from anybody. I dressed in the navy blazer Patricia had helped me pick out years ago at a shop on 17th Avenue. I brought flowers, a mixed bouquet from the greenhouse on Crowchild that Patricia had always loved, and a card for Suzanne that I'd spent 20 minutes choosing. I also brought a small framed print of a mountain landscape, something I knew Elaine admired because she'd mentioned it once at Christmas. It seemed right to acknowledge her too. She was a grandmother to my grandchildren after all. I drove to Daniel and Suzanne's home in Springbank, that new development west of the city where the houses have 3-car garages and the driveways are always freshly sealed. I'd helped with the down payment, $75,000 4 years ago, when the market was moving fast, and Daniel said they'd lose the house if they didn't move within 48 hours. I didn't ask questions. I transferred the money. The brunch was already underway when I arrived just before noon. About 18 people in the backyard, space heaters running, string lights on despite the daylight, Prosecco and orange juice, a catered spread from one of those Kensington brunch places Suzanne liked. Then Daniel stood up. I thought he was making a toast. He had a glass in his hand, and that particular expression he gets when he wants to seem casual but has rehearsed something. I've known that expression since he was 12 years old, trying to explain why the car had a new dent. He thanked everyone for coming. He said something about how blessed he felt. And then he reached under the patio table and produced an envelope, a thick cream envelope, the kind that costs more than regular stationery, and he walked it over to Elaine with both hands. "You have been the most incredible mother-in-law a man could ask for," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You've guided us, supported us, and shown me what a real family looks like. This is a small thank you from Suzanne and me." Elaine opened the envelope with practiced grace. Inside was a printed itinerary, a 1-4-night river cruise through the Netherlands, Belgium, and France. Departing from Amsterdam, 2 passengers, upper deck cabin, waterfront dinners, private shore excursions, the works. I found out the price later, $38,000. The table erupted. Elaine pressed her hand to her chest. Gerard looked genuinely startled. which was either honest surprise or a performance he'd mastered. Suzanne was already filming it. Daniel stood there, with his arms crossed and his chin up, soaking in the applause like a man who had been waiting his whole life to be seen as generous. I was sitting at the far end of the table. Nobody looked at me. A few minutes later, once the fuss had died down slightly, Daniel came over. He put a card on the table in front of me. A plain white envelope with Dad written on it in ballpoint pen. Inside was a generic Father's Day card, not even a Mother's Day card, which made no sense for the occasion, and a $50 gift card to Canadian Tire. Not $50 cash. A $50 gift card. To Canadian Tire. The card said, "Dad, hope your spring is going great. From Daniel, Suzanne, and the boys." I turned it over. I don't know what I was looking for. My grandson Noah, who had just turned 9, appeared at my elbow. He had a plate of fruit and was very seriously eating it one piece at a time. "Grandpa, what did you get?" I showed him the gift card. He looked at it. Then he looked at the table, where Elaine was still holding the cruise itinerary, while people leaned in to look at the photos. "Dad spent a lot," Noah said carefully. "The way children do when they understand something that adults are pretending not to notice." "It's the thought that counts, buddy," I said. Noah looked up at me with those brown eyes of his, completely sincere. "But what was the thought, Grandpa?" I did not have an answer for that. And I don't think he expected one. He went back to eating his fruit with great seriousness, and I sat with the question for the rest of the afternoon. I drove home along Sarcee Trail as the sun was finally burning through the clouds, and somewhere around the Bow River, the feeling I'd been pushing down all afternoon surfaced completely. It wasn't embarrassment. It wasn't even anger. It was recognition. I had seen this before. I just hadn't let myself name it. That evening, I went to the filing cabinet in my home office. Patricia and I had been careful people, every document organized, every receipt filed. I found the folder labeled with Daniel's name, and I spread its contents across my desk. All university at the University of Calgary. 4 years plus a 5th year, when he switched programs, $67,000 in tuition and living support. The wedding to Suzanne, $28,000, which I covered quietly after Patricia's death, because Daniel said they couldn't manage it alone. The down payment on the Springbank house, $75,000. A business loan 4 years ago, when Daniel tried to start a home renovation company with a friend, $40,000, which folded in under a year and was never discussed again. Monthly help since the wedding, sometimes $800, sometimes $1,500, for furnace repairs, car trouble, Suzanne's mat leave top-up, the boys' hockey registration, a new roof, roughly $62,000 over 4 years. Total, $272,000. Not including my time. Not including the 11 years of being a solo grandfather to Noah and his younger brother Max, picking them up from school when Suzanne had shifts, taking them camping at Lake Louise, teaching Noah to fish at Ghost Lake Reservoir, driving 2 hours to Lethbridge when Daniel called at 10 p.m., saying he'd had a fight with Suzanne and needed to talk. $272,000 in a lifetime, and I was worth a $50 gift card to Canadian Tire. I sat at my desk until past midnight, and somewhere in that quiet, something shifted in me. Not rage, something quieter, and more final than rage. Clarity. I was 64 years old. I was in good health. My property management company, Sinclair Properties, was still running well under a manager I trusted. I had assets. The Brentwood House, investment accounts at RBC, a commercial property in southeast Calgary I'd owned outright for 12 years, and a significant RRSP. My estate was worth, conservatively, $2.1 million, and every dollar of it was currently going to Daniel. Monday morning I called my lawyer, Sandra Park, 55, sharp, organized, someone who had known Patricia and didn't require explanation when things were serious. She met me that afternoon in her office on 8th Avenue downtown. "Sandra," I said, "I need to review my will. All of it. And I need to talk about the company." She listened to the entire story without expression. Then she removed her glasses and set them on the desk. "Harold," she said, "as your majority shareholder and sole owner of Sinclair Properties, you have complete authority here. Daniel holds no shares, no signing rights, and no legal claim on the company. If you've been supplementing his income informally, those were gifts. Legally, this is straightforward. What about the will? Your current will leaves him everything. The house, the accounts, the commercial property. Your share of the company proceeds. Shall we talk about alternatives? Yes. Let's talk. Over the next 2 hours, Sandra and I restructured everything. Daniel would receive exactly $38,000 in my new will. The price of the river cruise he had purchased for someone else's mother. The symmetry felt important. The rest would be distributed as follows. $600,000 into a trust for Noah and Max, jointly, accessible when each turned 25 and managed by Sandra's firm in the interim. $250,000 to the Alberta Cancer Foundation in Patricia's memory. The commercial property in southeast Calgary worth approximately $680,000 to my nephew Kevin, who had worked with me for 13 years and had the kind of loyalty Daniel had never understood. The Brentwood house to be sold, proceeds added to the boys' trust. Remaining assets to a short list of causes Patricia had cared about. The food bank, a children's literacy program, the SPCA. The no contest clause was Sandra's idea. If Daniel challenged the will, he would forfeit even the $38,000. Harold, she said as we finished, are you certain? This is final. I thought about the gift card. I thought about Noah's question. But what was the thought, Grandpa? I'm certain, I said. Sandra filed everything that afternoon. The next step was the accounts. Tuesday morning, I was at my RBC branch on Center Street when it opened. My branch manager there, a methodical man named Tom Hine who had processed Patricia's estate paperwork with tremendous care, handled everything without drama. Daniel had been listed as a secondary account holder on 2 accounts, my personal checking, which held $84,000, and a savings account with $137,000. I had added him after Patricia died, thinking it was sensible estate planning. I also had a joint line of credit with a $75,000 ceiling he had drawn on twice and repaid both times. All of this I had a legal right to change unilaterally, and I did. Within 90 minutes, Daniel's name was removed from everything. Tom asked if there was anything else. Yes, I said. If my son contacts you regarding these accounts, you'll be following privacy legislation as usual. Of course, Mr. Sinclair. I walked out of that bank and stood on Center Street in the May wind and felt something I could only describe as solid, like a man who had been leaning against a wall for 30 years and had finally just stood up straight. There was one more conversation I needed to have before Daniel found out. My nephew Kevin. I met him for lunch at a Vietnamese place on 16th Avenue that we'd been going to for years. Kevin was 41, married with 3 kids, had started with me as a site coordinator, and worked his way up by solving problems instead of creating them. He knew every property in our portfolio by address. He called tenants back within the hour. I told him everything. The brunch, the gift card, the figures I'd tallied, the will. Kevin set down his chopsticks. Uncle Harold, I didn't know it had gotten like this. I know you didn't. That's not why I'm telling you. I'm telling you because I'd like you to think about what it would mean to take over Sinclair Properties. Not as a gift, as a succession. He looked at me for a long moment. Are you serious? Completely. He picked up his chopsticks again and then set them back down. I'd be honored, he said quietly. But only if you're doing this because it's right. Not just because you're angry. I've had 5 days to make sure it's not just anger, I said. It isn't. He nodded. Then I'm in. The moment came 8 days after the brunch. Daniel had a pre-authorized payment set up through his personal account that drew from our joint line of credit on the 14th of each month, a leftover arrangement from 2 years ago, when he'd had a cash flow issue and I'd said he could use the buffer. I hadn't canceled it yet because Sandra said the will and the account changes were the priority, and the line of credit could wait a few days. It didn't matter. What I hadn't accounted for was that Daniel had also been using his secondary access to my checking account for something I discovered only when Tom Hine called me. Mr. Sinclair, there was an attempt to transfer $12,000 from your checking account this morning. It was blocked because the secondary holder's access has been removed. I thought you should know the attempt was made. $12,000. I asked Tom to send me the records. He could only share what was legally mine. which he did. The transfer description read, Property Investment Beaumont Partnership. Daniel had been trying to move $12,000 of my money into a joint account with his father-in-law. I sat with that for a long time. I called Sandra. She said, Harold, this changes the character of what we're dealing with. The attempt itself isn't criminal because the access was legitimately granted at the time the attempt was made, but it speaks to intent. Document everything. I did. Daniel called me 44 times over the next 3 days. I know because I counted. I listened to each voicemail once. The first ones were casual. Hey Dad, just checking in. Give me a call when you get a chance. By day 2, the tone shifted. Dad, I don't know what's happening with the accounts, but there's something wrong. Can you please call me? By day 3, Dad, I know you're upset. Whatever I did, just talk to me, please. I'm your son. That last word sat in me in a way I hadn't expected. On the 4th day, he showed up at my house at 7:45 inches the morning. I let him in. I wasn't ready not to. He looked like he hadn't slept. He was wearing the same jacket he'd had on at the brunch. He sat at my kitchen table, where he had eaten breakfast hundreds of times as a boy. Dad, what's happening? The accounts, the line of credit Tom said you made changes. I tried to transfer funds and it didn't go through. I don't understand. I set a piece of paper on the table in front of him. It was a printout of the transfer attempt. Property Investment Beaumont Partnership. He looked at it. $12,000, Daniel, from my account, going to Gerard. His jaw tightened. Dad, I was going to tell you. Gerard found a property in Canmore that was a real opportunity, and you thought you'd use my money to invest with your father-in-law. It was going to be profitable. I was going to pay it back. Like the $40,000 for the renovation company? That's not fair. No, I said, none of this is particularly fair. But let's talk about what is. I had prepared a second sheet. Not as many numbers as I might have once had, but enough. The down payment, the wedding, the monthly help, the university, the loan, $272,000. I slid it across. He stared at it. Dad, you gave me that money. I didn't steal it. You're right, I said. I gave it. Freely. And then I sat at a table in your backyard while you handed Elaine a $38,000 river cruise and put a $50 Canadian Tire gift card in front of me. The silence between us was the loudest thing in the room. I also spoke with Sandra Park this week. I continued. My will has been updated. You'll receive $38,000. His head came up. That's the cost of the cruise, I said. It seemed like the right number. Dad, you can't. The house, the company, everything you said you were building for us. I'm building for the boys, I said. Noah and Max will have a trust. Kevin will take over the company. The rest goes to causes your mother believed in. His face went through several expressions. Disbelief, calculation, grief. He landed on anger. Kevin, you're giving my birthright to a cousin? I'm giving it to someone who has shown up for it every day for 13 years, I said. Without being asked, without expecting gratitude. Kevin treats the work like it matters. You treated my generosity like it was automatic. He stood up, and for a moment I thought he might leave without another word. Then he turned. I was just trying to impress Gerard. He's always making comments about how successful Suzanne's brother's family is, how much they've accomplished. I felt like I had to do something big. I got carried away. I forgot what I was doing. You didn't forget, Daniel. You made a choice. And I've made mine, he cried then. Real tears. The kind I hadn't seen since his mother's funeral. Part of me, the part that is still and always will be his father, wanted to put a hand on his shoulder and tell him it would be fine, but I'd done that for 30 years, and it had not helped either of us. He left without a resolution. The days after were difficult in the way that doing the right thing is sometimes difficult. Not because I doubted the decision, but because love doesn't shut off at a signed document. It just changes shape. Suzanne called me 2 weeks later. We met at a coffee shop on Elbow Drive. She was more direct than I'd expected. Harold, I owe you an apology. I waited. The cruise was my idea, she said. I pushed Daniel to do it. My dad had been making comments about how Suzanne's brother-in-law was always going above and beyond for the family. How he felt like Daniel never quite measured up. I panicked. I wanted to prove something. I told Daniel we needed to make a statement. I never thought about what it would cost you. Not just financially. I mean what it would feel like. To sit there. She was crying. I appreciate that, I said. I genuinely do. But understanding why something happened doesn't change what it was. She nodded. The boys are asking for you. Noah especially. That one landed. I've never stopped being their grandfather, I said. Whatever happens between Daniel and me, the boys are not part of that. I started having Noah and Max on Fridays again the following week. Same as always. Max, who was 6, didn't fully understand that anything had changed. Noah, 9 and perceptive and careful, knew better. On the second Friday, while we were making sandwiches in my kitchen, he said without looking up, Grandpa, is everything going to be okay? I don't know the full answer to that, buddy, but I know that you and your brother are always going to be okay. That I can promise. He nodded, very seriously, and asked for extra mustard. Elaine Beaumont surprised me in September. She came to the house unannounced, which was unlike her. She stood in my doorway in a tan wool coat and looked genuinely uncomfortable. Harold, she said, may I come in? She told me she'd found out about the gift card the week after the brunch, that Daniel had shown her a photo, and she'd seen the Canadian Tire gift card in the background, and asked Suzanne directly. I was mortified, she said. I've been on that cruise itinerary twice since May, looking at it and feeling sick. I told Gerard the same thing. You had nothing to do with how Daniel chose to manage the relationship, I said. No, but I benefited from it, and that matters to me. She paused. For what it's worth, Harold, I think you're handling this with more grace than most men would. If my daughters treated Gerard the way Daniel has treated you, I would be devastated. I thanked her for coming. I meant it. The call from Daniel that I finally answered came in October, 5 months after the brunch. It was a Sunday evening. I'd been watching the Flames game. He called 3 times in a row, which had been our old signal when something was genuinely wrong, so I picked up. Dad, I'm here. I've been seeing someone, he said. A counselor. I've been going since August. I wanted to tell you. I'm glad to hear that. She's been helping me look at some patterns. How I've managed relationships. What I've expected from people. What I haven't given back. I didn't say anything. I let him have the space. I think I always believed you'd be there, he said. No matter what. That you were a permanent fixture. I stopped thinking of you as a person who could be hurt. You were just Dad. And I used that. I used the fact that you loved me. And I didn't think there was a cost for that. There's always a cost, I said. We just don't always see who's paying it. He was quiet for a moment. I'm not asking you to undo anything, he said. I understand why you did what you did. I need you to know that I'm trying. I don't know if it's enough, but I'm trying. That's all any of us can do, I said. We didn't make promises. We didn't repair the wound over one phone call, but something shifted. Not much. Enough. Christmas came and he brought the boys over for dinner, which I had not expected and quietly hoped for. He brought a gift, a framed photograph of Patricia and Daniel from a camping trip to Banff when he was about 12. Patricia is laughing at something. She always had a good laugh. He found it in a box of old photos, he said. He thought I might want it. I put it on the mantel, next to the one I already had of her. I'm writing this on a Thursday in February 2025. The snow is deep in Calgary this year. I had Noah and Max yesterday. We built a proper fort in the backyard, the kind with a real roof and a tunnel entrance. Kevin is running Sinclair properties better than I did at his age. Sandra tells me the estate documentation is in perfect order. Daniel and I speak on Sundays now, short calls. Carefully honest. He's working in project management for a mid-size firm. Suzanne went back to nursing full-time. The Springbank house is going up for sale. They found a townhouse in Inglewood that suits their actual income. I am not helping with the purchase. We have both accepted that. That $50 Canadian Tire gift card is in my desk drawer. I haven't used it. I keep it because it is the most expensive lesson I have ever received for $50. And I don't want to forget what it taught me. It taught me that love given without boundaries teaches the people we love that they have none. That a father who cannot say no cannot be fully trusted, because his yes means nothing. That you can adore your child and still require them to treat you with dignity. That these two things are not opposites. The will stands as written. The trust for the boys is growing. Patricia's name is on a research fund at the Tom Baker Cancer Center in Calgary that will outlast all of us. And on Sundays, when I talk to my son, I am talking to a man who is slowly, painfully, and honestly becoming someone I recognize again. It is not the ending I would have written for us, but it is a true one, and at 64, I have learned to value truth over comfort. If this story meant something to you, please subscribe to Father's Reserved Revenge and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. Leave a like if you stayed until the end, and I'd love to know what province are you watching from tonight. Drop it in the comments. Your support is what keeps these stories being told.